no, 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 that's not what I wanted to do. Well, you know what? It's going, it'll come to the computer. That's fine. We'll make it work. Um, but one of the things that I think they all did to varying degrees was, there was sort of a presumption that they would be doing original research as opposed to assessing the research that we've compiled. And so I think that will hopefully, we'll get some clarifications from them on that. But the hope is that we will have, I guess, a team in place, so that they will have time to go through the materials that the research committee has compiled. They'll be able to go through the hearings, the hearing transcripts. And again, that's another something that I'm thinking we'll need to think about is probably just going back through those transcripts and scraping those for recommendations coming from family members and community members as well. So that's where that is. I don't know if Amy, you want to add anything to that since you're also on the selection committee.
I think that summarizes it. I think it was us, the subcommittee recognizing that we needed to better define our expectations of the work that we were looking for, and so it gave us an opportunity to circle back with a little bit more structure and details, exactly what Nick just said. So hoping we'll hear back next week with those who resubmitted. But
Yeah. Okay. Are there questions, comments, criticisms? Okay.
I'm hoping, oh,
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
to add the so the code book that we created, I'm
Mhm.
hoping that that can be a resource, and whether or not it's going to be fully helpful, I think remains to be seen. But I'm hopeful that that can help by highlighting some of the themes that came up in terms of recommendations. And then there's way too many quotes associated with each, but at least a chance to start to look to see which quotes may want to be drawn on, to kind of help move that forward.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And that's another thing I completely forgot about until you resent that this morning. It's like, yes, we have the code book. And that should hopefully, again, facilitate the process. So yes, thank you for that. And yeah, hopefully as we update that, with the, you know, increasing number of hearings that we have on the books. Yeah, it's not the ideal way to do it, but we're moving forward, as I like to say, like a shark, we keep moving forward or we die. So other questions, comments, criticisms? And again, if you have criticisms, I'm totally open to hearing them. Um, okay. So then moving on, looking at the institutional reconciliation hearing that's scheduled for February 8th, 2025. We have two, I guess, feelers out for two venues at this point, St. John's College in Annapolis and University of Baltimore Law School in Baltimore. I had a very encouraging conversation with the special assistant to the president at St. John's earlier this week. And they are very much interested and supportive of the idea of hosting you know, the hearing there. I think we'd be looking at, let me see if I can find my notes here. Um, sorry, I've got a, yeah, here we go. Again, I kind of gave them sort of numbers, we'd be looking at, hopefully going from 9 to 5. Yeah, it's going to be an all day kind of thing. But then there would also need to be time for the event stream team to set up, beginning around about 7, and then they'll probably take till about 7 to close up shop. But again, they were, he said, they'd be willing to, waive the rental fees for us, if in exchange we'd be willing to, let them put a banner or something with the SJC logo, on it, and they're gonna comp us the space. And again, we talked about, having the space for living and growing, the counselors. He said they'd be open to that. They would just ask if we can, start, and I have no problems giving them a little love, for that since they're doing right by us. He also said that they have a dining hall within walking distance, for the lunch period. And so he said basically they could give us the staff rate for the, I think it was $8 or $10, for access to the all-you-can-eat buffet, which would work a lot faster than trying to get people going to various places, in and around Annapolis on a Saturday. Um, he said he could possibly, sort of provide a coffee service, that's to be negotiated. Um, Parking said, parking on campus would be a challenge, but there is a state parking garage across the street from campus, which would be free and available on a Saturday. Let's see what else. Yeah, it says, the campus police are used to working with, Anne Arundel County and City of Annapolis law enforcement. So working with Maryland State Police and the two representatives that, that we would have there shouldn't be a problem. Um, I'm trying to think. Yeah, what are we looking at? I'm just trying to remember the space because I had that written down. Um, where was it? It was the Key Auditorium, which can hold up to about 600 people. So, capacity would not be an issue. But that's, again, what we were able to get from St. John's. I'm still waiting to hear back from UB Law. I filled out their form and, I got sort of a message back saying, well, it looks like you already have a venue. It's like, no, we don't have a venue. In fact, I specifically held off on that conversation until we heard back from you. So we're waiting to hear back from UB Law, and as soon as I hear anything, I will let you all know so we can hopefully make an informed choice. Aside from the fact that Annapolis isn't exactly as ideally located as, say, Baltimore. Just, and again, I'm thinking of flying in from California, but, it sounds like St. John's could be a really good venue. And again, their president testified at the Anne Arundel County hearing a couple years ago. And, again, given the history with, the lynching of Henry Davis, they're very much aware of that and sort of reckoning with that history. I think it would be an appropriate venue to hold it if, we decide to go that route. But questions, comments, criticisms on that?
So I have a quick question, and
Yes.
so both places sound good. I know you're waiting to hear back from UB Law. So couple questions. On UB Law, will they have the space to accommodate? I don't know how many people may be at that hearing. I don't know what could be projected. I don't even know if you have that information again. You could do that. So I guess my concern would be whether or not UB Law has the space for everyone. I'm assuming based on your conversations with St. John's that they do.
Yeah, St. John's, yeah, that won't be an issue. UB Law, as I recall, the initial um event where we kicked off the commission in 2019 was in one of their bigger auditoriums. So I know we could easily squeeze about, I'm guessing, somewhere between 100 and 200 people,
Okay.
which should be, big enough, If not, I'm sure they will let us know. But I think, yeah, they do have a space that would be able to accommodate a pretty sizable um, audience of participants.
Okay. And then with the coffee service, is it just coffee and tea and water service, or are they giving some kind of St. John's that is
Yeah.
like some kind of Danish, some kind of fruit, something?
That's a very good question. We would probably need to work that out if we decide that's where we want to go. Um, but yeah, I think, yeah, and here again, I want to be mindful of the fact that we're not going to try to take advantage of, what is actually some serious generosity on their part.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
but
promising that they have a cafeteria, like a
yeah,
dining is closed. That's why I was
Yeah.
thinking that.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it just sounded in some ways, kind of, yeah, once you get to Annapolis, I mean, this actually would be pretty ideal in that it'll be fairly well contained, and again, just sort of wandering from the auditorium to the cafeteria and back would give, that, and again, yeah, just sort of space away, but again, it's not like people running, to find something somewhere in it's just right there. And, again, they have a wide variety as most, college cafeterias have these days, so that, there'll be options, for people with, vegan and or other, dietary requirements. So yeah, I mean, I think it was, as I said, I was very encouraged by the conversation, so I'm
Okay.
just curious to see what UB has to offer. But I'm thinking worst case scenario, we've got a spot in Annapolis that, is excited to have us.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Other questions? Yeah, Amy.
Sorry, I don't know where the raise the hand feature went on Zoom. I lost it a couple months ago and cannot refind it. Um, I think 100 seating for 100 is not enough. That's
Okay.
just my gut. I mean, I'm not basing that on anything, but I don't know. I have to imagine minimum 150, but I, yeah, I mean, if every county has participated, might have a level of interest in joining times, I think we've got to invite all the elected official representatives across the state, of which, most won't come. But
Right.
I don't know. I just, if we only have, yeah, then how do we say no to people?
Right. Right.
That's my only concern about numbers.
No,
And I was just
that's
thinking about Micah too, Micah has some big auditoriums.
okay.
There's no historical significance to that venue. Um,
Okay. No, I'll definitely look into that. Just yeah, yeah, because again, it's just difficult to try to anticipate how many people are we looking at for this, especially since it's the last one. And, if all goes right, we'll have people that we're inviting. And if they reject the invitation, that's another something I want to talk about a little later, it's like, can we flex our subpoena power and get them there, if they turn down the initial invitation. But yeah, we would need to kind of figure out, especially if we get word out that we've subpoenaed folks and, various news media pick up on that. At least that's the hope. So yeah, definitely we'll look into that, and again, when I hear back, say, okay, what do you have? How many people can you hold? Would be the first two questions that I would be asking. Chris, your hand is up.
Thanks. Now, is this the same place where we had as you said, the first meeting or just about the first meeting when I don't even think we were officially a commission yet, where we had Cheryl and Eiffel
Yeah.
and yeah, okay, because that was a pretty fair sized venue, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that probably would be sufficient unless because I just don't know, especially what time of day we're still taking daytime. We're not taking evening, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, for this one, and here again, these are things that we need to kind of
Work
figure
out.
out. Because if we're talking about institutional and reconciliation or reparations, the current thinking right now is to try to do a whole day, sort of like a 9 to 5. And I'm thinking if we split it from 9 to 12:30, have lunch from 12:30 to 1:30, and then go 1:30 to 5, that gives us 7 hours in which to handle institutions
Mhm.
and reparations. Now, yeah, that's going to make for a really long day, especially for
Mhm.
event stream team folks. But, short of splitting that and doing a whole nother institutional hearing, which, yeah, we just don't have the time for that. But, if again, if people have other ideas or, other, about ways to do that, to get everything in, I am totally open to ideas that you may have. So, but that's kind of where my thinking is at this point. And here again, if you have different ideas, I mean, I do not have the corner on the market. So yeah, if you've got ideas, I'm certainly happy to hear them.
Well, who have you talked to at St. John's? Is this
Um, yeah, his name was
yeah.
Bruce. Why am I blanking? Where did that set of notes go? Um, Bruce Douglas. He is the recently hired special assistant to the president.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I
Uh,
think I know the person who is not that high up, but someone who I think used to or does handle their site rentals or their site, what it's not called rentals, but something else like that, where there's space accommodations. Because I know earlier on I had talked to her about some different things we were going to do, but that was when we were sort of vaguely coming out of COVID, so it didn't have to take place.
okay. Okay.
I just thought offhand with what we've seen so far, I thought that the not that I wouldn't like Annapolis, it's right here, but I thought the Baltimore site was pretty fairly ample for what I would anticipate our crowd to be.
Okay. Yeah, well, as I said, once I get something from UB Law, we'll at least have something to sort of do some comparative shopping. And then yeah, just looking at Micah or Baltimore City Hall, which Amy just suggested. Yeah, still open to, at least sort of tracking down and seeing if these things might be possibilities. Um, Michelle G, your hand is up.
Yeah, just a quick question. For the institutions, the focus is media and government. Is that correct?
It's
Or
media, government, law
mostly
enforcement.
law enforcement?
Yeah, I have to say I'm sort of enjoying the idea of having the Attorney General's office issue subpoenas to state's attorneys' offices, since we know of their involvement. Yeah, it would be fun to be able to flex that again. So that's the hope. And again, hopefully they'll respond to the invitation first. But that's another something we're going to need to start moving on sooner than later. Chris, your hand is up again, or is it just, yeah, where is it? I think it goes to the React.
No, I'm just wondering if I know we're talking about subpoena, but I wasn't sure if we're talking more about getting people here to just have butts and seats or getting
Oh,
people here
no, not just butts and seats. No.
Okay.
Again, because we're talking about accountability, and again, for responsibility, participation, abnegation of, dereliction of duty, shall we say. Yeah, I'd like to hear from state's attorney's offices, how do you account for this? And, what can we do to provide some sort of repair and or, restoration? So, yeah, I think it's not so much about, just getting people there as much as, because for example, I mean, the other big one, yes, the Baltimore Sun has issued a formal apology. That's nice. What are you going to do? How are we going how do you hold yourselves accountable? Short of that, how should we hold you accountable for all of that? And I think you all probably better than most, who've had to read all of the stuff in the Sun and all the other papers.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, you all not only reported the so-called news, but you created a climate in which this sort of thing was encouraged, if not, encouraged, then certainly, you know, approved of. Where yes, there was always the perfunctory, we should let the justice system or the legal system, as I like to say, sort of run its course. But how many of them said, but ultimately the brute got what he deserved? I mean, if that's not, and again, the constant reporting of all of the other lynchings that were happening across the country, it created that climate of fear and enabling. So yeah, there's got to be some kind of accountability. And I'm pretty darn sure if we invite especially the current publisher of the Baltimore Sun to show up, they're going to reject it. So, you know, I have no problem saying, let's hit him with a subpoena and, it's like, and get his butt in that seat so we can ask him the uncomfortable questions that they need to respond to.
I think it would definitely make the news if David Smith attended the hearing. That would be something.
Well, all right, there's something to shoot for. Just make it, okay. Other questions, comments? Okay, well, this actually gets us to sort of that piece. Okay, who are we going to ask, for in terms of testimony? Who do we want to invite? Who do we want to subpoena? And those things. I know on the witness list that Michelle Coles and the interns put together, if I can find that. I'm just going to see if I can share real quick, just so we can take a look at that. Where is share? There we go. And desk, no, we need that. And share, just so everybody can see. We've got, sort of the list of witnesses, media experts, people in terms of law enforcement. I'm thinking if we can, put together maybe another column and just kind of say, who do we invite, who do we, and if they don't respond to the invitation by a certain date, who do we hit with subpoenas? And maybe start that as another list. Does that sound reasonable? Or am I just kind of out of, it's like, sort of, yeah, just off in left field or something like that?
Say that one more time again, Nick.
Yeah, the hope is, again, for the people, say, for example, in law enforcement or, David Smith, the publisher of The Sun, to invite them to testify, give them, a date by which we would like a response so we can plan accordingly. And then if they don't respond, or if they say, no, I'd really prefer not to, that we can then issue subpoenas to compel their testimony.
Yeah, that sounds
Now,
great. Hannah, were you the person? Did you add all of these policing counties? Did you do that?
I did,
Thank
and
you.
I need to. There's a couple. There's
Thank
probably a
you so
few.
much. I appreciate you doing. I hadn't seen it yet, but I really
Gosh,
appreciate you digging
gosh,
into that.
don't worry. Not a problem. I have a few counties left to do, and for some of them, they're actually kind of hard to find the contact information for. I wasn't
Okay,
super surprised that some of I think like Cecil County, I did not find readily accessible contact information for. So I'm kind of like, what's going on? How active are these
right.
groups? How
So
much do they want to be in touch with the
one
public?
I'm going to ask just a couple clarifying questions because I'm not as familiar with Maryland's system. Are these police accountability boards, are they internal to the police departments, or are they external citizen review boards? Do you know?
That's a good question. So I know that um, now every county is supposed to have these like citizen review boards, or
Okay,
rather, it's actually the police accountability boards. And
right.
this is coming from the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021. Now, I think just from what I've seen so far, it's looking like a mixture of internal and citizen
Okay. Okay.
participation.
So I just so my background experience, one of the things I did when I was at DOJ in the Civil Rights Division is I investigated police departments for violating people's civil rights and negotiated changes to their policy practices, all of those things to improve their conduct. Um, and this is just based on my experience, and every place is different. So I can only base it on what I saw. So the citizens review boards, a lot of the times, because they are made up of citizens and they're external to the police department, a lot of times they're seen as toothless, and they want to help, but they don't have the authority to make the types of changes that need to take place. And then that's distinct from the internal kind of IA, internal affairs part of the police department, where they are usually beholden to the police unions and are going to be very resistant to change. And so I think we just kind of have to approach thinking about strategically about who needs to be there, and I could see both being there for different reasons, because the people in the Citizens Review Board are likely going to be very frustrated, more than likely, by their experience, because they're going to say, we keep getting overturned and we don't have the power to do this and we need additional powers. And I don't think we will have time to be able to hear from every county, but if there are any, and this is if you could research this, if there are any entities within Maryland that exercise some sort of supervisory role over what all of the IAs for the different IA internal affairs, what the different police departments do, or that are like the center place where training is disseminated from to all of the counties. Strategically, that's where we should be looking, because whatever we're able to get there can flow down. But if we do it at the county by county level, it's going to be too many people and it's all going to be different and everyone's pointing like this. And so we really have to find the way to point like that. Um, but I don't know Maryland's system enough to know how to answer that.
No, that all makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And yes, okay. Whew, let's see.
Okay, so I just wanted to like reshift how you're thinking about who we're asking to come, because we'll have
So
very different questions depending on if they are from the civilian side or the police department side.
one thing I definitely haven't done is I haven't read the Police Accountability Act of 2021. So
Okay.
that's one thing that I am personally curious, and I think it would be definitely relevant to some of our projects at the state archives, particularly the ones around incarceration in Maryland. So yeah, I'm curious what that act says.
Yeah.
And like Maryland State Police is a thing that's different than the county police here.
And that would be a good one. I think that would also be a good one to think about, because I'm sure whatever is taking place there is probably filtering down in ways as well. So I would think if we were going to have one, that would be the one.
The
Thank
state.
you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because you were suggesting, yeah, to get the state police there versus trying to bring in all of the various county and local entities.
Can't do it. Yeah.
I think as far as Baltimore now, always confused by the Baltimore City Police Department because it's kind of sort of separate, it seems, from or just different rather than other like county police departments. They kind of have their own thing going on. For the time being, I don't think it's its own, like I don't think it's a separate, oh goodness, like agency of Baltimore city government, however that was on the ballot, but they've got their own kind of thing going on. But I'm still putting a pin in Baltimore, but also certainly like state level police stuff,
Mhm.
just trying to understand the structure there. If anyone else has more information on that, please forward it.
Okay, great. Amy, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you to Michelle for texting me privately about how to raise my hand. Um, I'm so excited.
You didn't know that?
No,
Well,
no,
they keep updating Zoom, so it's
I
like,
know.
okay,
I
where
just
the
gave
heck did
up.
it go?
Anyway, now I lost my train of thought. The question is, if we're inviting folks to testify and we do not hear a response or they say no, there may be some folks that we want to give a verbal testimony and others that we're happy just to have the written testimony. And in part, we can't hear from everybody. I mean, that was sort of just said. So some we may want to ask specifically, one or the other, or there might be an and or in there.
Mhm.
So I just, before we do subpoenas, we need to sort of think about,
Mhm.
if you say, Amy, we want you to testify, I say, there's no way I'm going to stand up there and give a testimony. Oh, well, would you like to do a written testimony? Okay, I can do that. And, are we okay with that as an answer from some? I just think I think the subpoena power is awesome, and I think we need to think about how best to use that
Mhm.
so it's productive, not destructive.
Right. Yes, Counselor Franklin.
So, piggybacking on what Amy just said, is the committee open to virtual testimonies?
Yeah, I mean, we'll be live streaming, so if there's a way that we can have people either record it and submit it, ideally if they were online so that we could have some interaction would be the ideal. But yeah, I don't see why we can't use 21st century technology to, have them present testimony.
And I'm asking because I know that the commission is working with a finite number of dollars, and I know there were conversations before about bringing some people in who may be national,
Mhm.
or and so I didn't know what the monies were, so I was just thinking of ways we could have fuller participation if the resources aren't there to support um, those who are unable to fly in.
Mhm. Okay. No, great question, great idea. Chris, your hand is up.
Thank you. And this is on purpose. Along the lines of what Amy was saying, I just wonder about, again, what the approach is, depending on who we're asking to speak.
Mhm.
Because frankly, if we're asking somebody to speak or inviting somebody to speak, and then they say no, and then we subpoena them, then it's like, well, why'd you ask me? If you're inviting me, but you're going to subpoena, so you weren't really inviting anyway. It's like as when we go through, you're being voluntold to do something. So I
Mhm.
feel like we just need to sort of figure out what's that approach is going to be. If we really just want somebody to testify, then I think we're having this, and we request something that's more definitive as this is what we want to happen.
Mhm.
And if it's not you or someone from your agency can represent you so that they know it's sort of however just as direct as possible. We want you to show. We want a representation from your so then
Mhm.
it's above board, it's out there, in difference to passive aggressive. Well, we'd like you to come here. You don't do it. So I think that's one avenue I think we should at least consider the exploration of that.
Okay.
Oh, and also, because the workload, I want to encourage and normalize what Hannah said. If any of you have ideas, if any of you have thoughts about the different types of agencies that maybe exist that you know of in different states or different cities that we could possibly identify, please feel free to look yourselves for those. In other words, even though we're at the Maryland State Archives, even though we're here in Annapolis, doesn't mean we know everything, doesn't mean we found out everything, doesn't mean we've talked to everybody, and doesn't mean that between now and between these hearings, we will all of a sudden find the answers. So in other words, if you, Michelle, come up with some idea about a possible thing, then I have no problem with you reaching out yourself as a commissioner to say, hi, I'd like to blah, 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 blah. I wonder if you could do that. And if you want us to follow up on that, then we can follow up on that or something like that. But I don't want any to feel like there's no stepping on toes or things like that. Just feel free to reach out and touch and then let us know if we haven't already done so, how we can help facilitate that if that seems the better way to go. But I don't want a rock not to be turned because we're thinking that somebody else should know better, and let's let them do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Um, Other thoughts, comments?
I guess I have one question, because it does seem like there's also a divide. This kind of connects to what Michelle was saying before, that we want those at the top to hold them accountable, have them squirm in their seats. And on the other hand, get those who may be more honest and do a more honest accounting and more thoughtful. Um, there's a tension between the two.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, again, I think maybe providing the option for written testimony might be, sort of the happy medium there, especially, like if we want to get more local kinds of things, and then yes, just okay, who do we want to have in the hot seat? Let's just send those out, but then also, send the invitations for written testimony.
I'll say without raising my hand, I think if we do have that, Michelle, that's probably, quite frankly, a good thing because that means we are potentially making progress. Because if everybody, as we know, we're a part of the choir. If everybody part of the choir shows up, then it's like the choir is going to sing the same tune. If
Mhm.
someone who's not from the same religion comes in, then they may think, well, I think about this differently. I think about this differently. So then we have a chance to reconcile, or we have a chance to share ideas and thoughts which could take us further than staying where we already are. So I feel like that tension, whereas it's awkward, I'm sure some of us have had the thought where somebody complains about us or complains about something we did or blah blah blah. And they're like, oh, I must be doing something. Because if I wasn't doing anything, then this person who totally disagrees would not have said that I'm wrong or said that I'm this or said that I'm that if I'm not making something happen or being at least forceful and clear about whatever my point or our point is.
Mhm. Okay. No, that's, yeah, again, very helpful. All right. Other thoughts, ideas?
I guess for me, probably just figuring out some deadlines for us.
Mhm.
So, what's going to be the deciding factor on the venue and when do we expect to make that decision?
Yeah. I'm hoping within the next week or so, certainly before the next full commission meeting, I'm hoping that we'll be able to lock something down. Um, I think also just in terms of, if we're going to be sending invitations out, we're probably going to need to start finalizing lists. I'll say, let's give ourselves that deadline of say maybe by the next reconciliation committee meeting at the beginning of December, hopefully we can maybe start, hammering that in place
Yeah.
so that we can, get those out over the course of December, maybe early January, but then they've at least got time to respond.
Yeah. And um okay, I forgot the other question I was going to ask, but okay, so sometime in the next I remember. So you said St. John's. Did you say was that the one that had the 100-person capacity?
No, they've got 600-person capacity. So
It
yeah.
was Baltimore. Which one was Baltimore Law that
Baltimore
had
was
the one?
probably smaller, as I recall. I mean, it felt like a really big space. Um, and I know I mean I could probably check with Will Schwartz because he keeps tabs of, about how many people were there. Um, but yeah, I'm thinking, we could, yeah, it's probably somewhere in that 150 to 200 range. I can also touch base with the person who reached out from UB to just say, what is the capacity on that particular venue?
Yeah. Okay. And and so both are available to us.
Yes, both have availability on the 8th. That was, sort of what took the Reginald Lewis Museum out of the running because they've got an all-day thing happening there on that date.
Okay.
Um, and we know the State House, saying, well, can't really do it on a Saturday, but if you want to do it on a Friday night, which kind of defeats the purpose there too. So, we're just trying to see
If
what options are available.
if we narrow down our top wish list, and so we should focus on doing that. But if we narrow down our top list wish list and let's say we're hearing back from people that they're not available
Mhm.
at this point, would we consider pushing this back a couple weeks?
Ooh. Um, I'm hesitant to open that up at this point just
Okay.
because, you know, we need to get these things done. We also need to, I think, be mindful of, whoever we get to do the final report is going to need the time to go through
Hmm.
all of this stuff that we're generating, and particularly, the stuff that comes out of the institutional and and reparations piece. So, to
So
push that.
just
Yeah.
as a counterpoint, I would say whenever we get the person who's going to write the report, I've always envisioned the report as having kind of two parts to it. The truth part, where they're really kind of recapping what we did through all these county hearings, and then the reconciliation piece. They're definitely going to have their hands full with that first half, where if our reconciliation piece wasn't until maybe March 1st, they would still, I don't think they'll be done with the truth half before we have this hearing. So, yeah,
Okay.
just a thought.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. Yeah, I mean, but and here again, I think maybe let's.
We'll see. Cross the bridge
Yeah,
when we
I
come
was
to
gonna say,
it.
yeah, let's get that list together and
Okay.
get some invitations out and see what comes back.
Okay.
There again, I think with those invitations, if we could say, if you could please let us know by this date so we can plan accordingly,
Okay.
that would probably be I think
Okay.
a way to go. Yeah.
And then I just wanted to ask both Stephanie and Michelle, did either of you have any potential names that you thought we should consider inviting? And if so, did you get a chance to add them to the spreadsheet? I thought you did, Stephanie, but I remember you telling me names, and I just wanted to confirm if you got them on there.
So I put on there Yvette Cornell and Antonio Moore. And
Okay.
so I want to get a good email address for you. So I've sent out that inquiry. So as soon as I have that, I will update the sheet.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I remember at a prior meeting, we started to brainstorm. So some of the ideas that I had are on the list. They
Okay,
were
your
ideas we
ideas
all
made
had.
it on there. Okay. All right. If anyone else has any, just please put them on there and we'll have to figure that out.
Okay. And
And Kayla, you too. I know you. She's not actually, guys. She's only pretend interning for us right now. Her internship doesn't start until the spring, but she's so excited about this work that I said this is when we're meeting. So I shouldn't really give her assignments now. But if you feel like it, just taking a look and seeing if you have any ideas or top suggestions, we're open to them.
yeah.
And even and she with her being at Howard Law, she's a student of Justin Hansford, who's a great civil rights leader in this type of space, and Kayla's also worked on some of the reparations efforts taking place in Lakeland. It's Lakeland, right, Kayla? Lakeland, Maryland. So if you even or feel like running it by Justin just to show him what we're thinking about and see if he has any ideas as a professor in this space, I wouldn't have any problem with that. I don't know if anyone else would be concerned about getting ideas from him.
No,
That's something I certainly can do.
yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe we should try to put him on the list and invite him to speak.
He's on the list. He's
Oh,
already on the
okay.
list.
All right.
So
Well,
now he'll know he's on the list.
all right then. Yeah, and again, I mean, Kayla, I mean, we all have day jobs, so contribute as you are able. And again, I'm always hesitant to give out homework, but just again for the accountability piece, yeah, we're talking about a lot of good things here, but we should probably think in terms of, all right, what are next steps? Who's going to be responsible for that? And I know we're running short on time, but we'll figure that out. Amy, your hand is up.
Yes. I'm sorry, I've been trying to figure out what a room size is at St. Francis Academy. Um, I'm wondering if we know that there are certain people that we want to present even now, that a save the date communication slash request to testify goes out. For example, if we want Wes Moore to testify, let's get that on his calendar now. Let's not wait till December. Let's put that notice in through the pipeline now. If we know we want William Darity to testify, let's get it on his calendar today, not today, next week. Like if there's just a short list of folks that we can extend that invitation now to sort of anchor, that may actually go back to help inform Michelle Coles's question about the date. And I'm all for not moving that date, just because if we start moving dates, everything keeps getting shoved later. So anyway, I just wonder if we know for sure we want certain people, regardless of anything else, let's get those invites out, or those requests. I like Chris's terminology, request to testify. And St. Francis, I'm assuming everybody knows what St. Francis Academy is all about. It's an all boys school. I don't know if it's 100% African American boys or African American, and if there's other races and ethnicities involved. But I just think, reflecting on who the 38 known victims are in the state, and the history and patterns, and we're trying to think out of the box about venues. It could be an interesting venue. It's in Baltimore, going out towards Patterson Park, I believe.
Okay, great.
It would not be a fancy, auditorium space. It would be probably their gym, from what I can tell. Yeah,
All right.
Brian, like Brian's, whoever we need to, whoever these bigger names are, even smaller names, if somebody's important, regardless of what size they are in space, if somebody we really want invited to just testify, we got to get that out and not wait.
Yeah, I know we had talked about Morgan. I know we can look back, and see if they're amenable. I know, again, with HBCUs, I know Bowie's somewhat technology challenged. Morgan was less so when I was a student there. I don't know if that's still the case, but we can certainly look into it, and just kind of see if Morgan is still available or even interested in possibly doing it. But yeah, we can follow up. Make a note of that. Okay. And Counselor Franklin.
Yeah, I would like some clarity, please, because I looked at the expert witness list. There's a lot on there. A lot of different people, kind of a sameness in terms of professors. There's some that overlap or kind of, because a lot of those names I'm very familiar with, they kind of say the same thing. How are we determining who will be the priority experts that we want? I think that's very important. And I'm not certain if everybody on that list would be considered an expert. I don't know how we're defining that.
I'll just respond that's what we would love input on. The way that list was generated, if you recall, is I had our other interns do, and I apologize, I'm going to pick up my kid from school now, so I had to start driving. But I just do research on who has written on this topic, and then from that long list that they found, we pulled out the names as potential witnesses, but we haven't prioritized them. So we certainly do not intend to invite all of them. So if there are any ones of those people that you were like, oh, this is the person, and not so sure, if you could just put a note like on the spreadsheet, maybe further to the right, just kind of helping us narrow that down, that would be really helpful. Because the list is over inclusive, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so I would be more than happy to help with that. I just want to make sure that there is like a common understanding of how we're defining who the expert is. So in doing that, I'm not, including or excluding people who the group feels falls within the definition of an expert.
I hear you.
You know,
I
Yeah,
think we were generally looking at experts as people who either write, research, or teach in this space as kind of the broadest definition. Um, I think that's the kind of the broad area.
okay. But I would assume you would also be looking at those with the lived experience that
Oh
bring
yeah.
other kind of community kind of focus.
Oh, no, certainly, certainly, certainly. No, I just meant the people that are on the list. That's how they were deemed experts because it was
Okay.
coming from their writing. I don't mean that's the only way to be an expert. I just meant that's why they were considered experts and added to the list is because they have written books in this space. But we certainly don't need to hear from three people saying the same thing. And so if there's one person who, knows it best, then that's I think who we should ask first and kind of check that box as that being covered and then look to vary the witnesses in bringing different experiences and different expertise.
The other thing I want to say is I know we've had kind of active conversations in this space is that people also define reparations differently. And I think even some of those people who were on the list that are considered the expert witness list define it differently.
Mhm.
So I
Okay.
don't know what that means for us. I don't, in terms of what the hearing is looking to garner, I need a little help with the direction of that because that again is going to better inform what I write next to each person. And so
yeah,
I know since you all are commission members, you have um more information or context on what you're looking for because you've been having these meetings. But I'm just trying to make sure that I'm able to, provide as comprehensive input as possible.
yes, yeah. And that's great. And again, that's why I value so much your perspective on this. And that sort of gets me to the last piece. And I know we are kind of a little over time, but if you can just indulge me, because I know we've had those conversations, what should reparations be, and again, I know, Counselor, you've said it's got to be monetary and it's got to be directed specifically for descendants of freed African American slaves. And there are others who've had different ideas. And so my hope is, and again, sort of as we move forward and start thinking, all right, let's get down to brass tacks. What kind of real recommendations are we making? I've put together another Google sheet, like we need another Google sheet. But anyway, but just sort of with separate tabs, again, sort of looking at symbolic and material reparations. So looking at things like, okay, I'm coming at this from a both and, not an either or. And let's make this, comprehensive as possible. So that if we're going to talk about, monetary reparations, ideas for that and what we should be getting money for go specifically into that material reparation sheet. If you want to talk about symbolic things like, okay, we're going to have markers or whatever kind of things, put those in the symbolic space. If you think it should be specifically for African American descendants of slaves, we got a sheet for that. And if you want sort of more broader policy related ideas, let's put them in that bucket, And so again, and I just sort of have here, for ideas for the recommendation. And then if you can provide a brief rationale, because we're going to need that for when we start writing and hopefully transition these things from recommendations in the last part of the report into draft legislation that will be able to, get people to introduce into the General Assembly is kind of that's kind of my vision for what this is. And if you think this is wholly inadequate or needs some reworking, please let me know. Please share. You all have access to it. So if you want to start filling in things, you can. but here again, this is just to kind of start putting things, because again, I know I started one with a Google Doc, and we've got some things in there, but I think if we can now, as a group, as a committee, start thinking about, okay, well, how do I want to see recommendations for reparations go? What do I have? What ideas do we have? And we can kind of start putting them into these various buckets that I think will help as well. And if you don't think it will, I can ZOTS this thing with no problem. But anyway, so that's where it is. As I said, you've all got access to it. Let me stop sharing real quick. There we go. And so if you have questions, comments, criticisms, feel free to share them. Again, I would be grateful if you would, start thinking and putting some of your ideas into those spaces so we can, hopefully by next meeting say, all right, here are some of the ideas that we're playing with. And we can kind of then supplement and add as we get more out of the hearings, testimonies, and things like that. We can then also get those into one of those, one of those buckets. So I'm going to stop there. If you have questions, comments, criticisms, I'm open to hear them, but I want to thank you all for you're taking the time to do this, and for the work that you're doing to move this forward. So it's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to keeping this moving.
Nick, I just want to say, especially in light of this week, whenever you say questions, comments, or criticisms, I think about Malcolm X when he would start a speech. Was it friends, allies, and enemies? Something like that. He would always say. All right, Malcolm, you go, boy.
Yep. No, I mean, he knew who he was talking to.
He
He knew he was listening.
He knew
No,
his
maybe
craft.
not with the best of intentions, but he knew that.
He knew.
So no, but that's just something that I, started, teaching, because I know students, as we know, can be very critical about what they do. And I figure, well, hey, at least give me the criticism now where I can at least
Right.
do something about it, as opposed to waiting to the end of the semester, after class evaluation. So, all right. Well, barring any further comments or questions or criticisms, I'll say thank you all and have a wonderful weekend. And I'll be seeing several of you next week in Leonardtown. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, before we run,
Yes.
Chris, can you hear me, Chris?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
one of my local partners in Leonardtown, Michael Kent,
Oh, yeah.
says he knows you, and he
Yes.
says he hopes you're coming. Are you coming to that one?
I am to the one in person, St. Mary's. Yes, I do.
In-
I do plan that.
Yeah, you are coming?
Yes, yes.
Oh, great. Okay, look forward to seeing you next week then.
All right, sounds good. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks
Okay,
again.
bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good
wonderful
weekend.
You too.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good weekend. God bless.
Bye. You too.
Right.